We are continuing our series called Aliens and Strangers, and today's message is called Jesus, the Ultimate Alien. Now, some of you may think it's sacrilegious or perhaps even blasphemous for me to call Jesus an alien, but I guess it depends on your definition of alien. But hear me out this morning. Our key text from last week was from 1 Peter chapter 2, and that chapter starts out by calling Jesus a living stone. In fact, it called Jesus the stone the builders rejected, which became the capstone or the chief cornerstone for the house of God. And the house of God is the church that all of us are a part of today. We're all living stones in this building. So why was Jesus why was he rejected? He was rejected because he was different, because he didn't meet the expectations of the people. He didn't fit that prototype of what the people wanted their Messiah to be. So that brings us to 1 Peter 2, verses 7 through 10, which says, "Now to you who believe, this stone is precious. But to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become the capstone, and a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall." They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And from there, Peter goes on to call us aliens and strangers. Why? Because we are part of this movement, the church, which is built upon the foundation of the ultimate alien, Jesus Christ. We'll look at these verses again later in this series, but I want to show you how Jesus is different from the world, and therefore we are different from the world. John 1:10 in the New Living Translation says, "He, Jesus, came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him." Jesus created this world, and he even made man in his own image, and yet, when he came, the world had devolved so much that it didn't even recognize its own maker. I believe in evolution, not the evolution taught in schools. I believe that mankind, when left to their own devices, will evolve in a bad way, regress into wanton sinfulness. I think one of the most telling statements was when Hillary Clinton was running for president, and she had some views that were the polar opposite of what her husband had when he was president. He signed the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as between one man and one woman. And when Hillary was asked why she could no longer support that and now supported gay marriage, she said, "I think we all have evolved." Have we all evolved? Less than 18 years after the passage of the Defense of Marriage Act, she had completely reversed on this issue, and by saying we all have evolved, seemed to indicate that if you hadn't evolved along with everyone else, there was something wrong with you, like you were an alien or something. Our culture can evolve incredibly fast, and that's why Jesus was such an alien when he arrived on this planet some 2,000 years ago. Let me read John 1:10 and 11 from the Amplified. It says, "He came into the world And though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him, did not know him. He came to that which belonged to him, to his own, his domain, creation, things, world, and they who were his own did not receive him and did not welcome him. Jesus was an outsider, an alien, and unwelcome on the very planet and among the very people he had created in his own image. And both the Old Testament and the New Testament declare that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Yet, as I stated last week, because of sin, this world has become the domain of Satan. It reminds me of when our son Jacob, he owned a house in California. It was a beautiful home. He bought it on a VA loan, large home, brand new. And he moved in closer into LA because he was going to school there. So he rented his home out. He got an agent and he did everything right, he thought, and rented his home out. And the people he rented it to, without his permission, invited others to come in and live in that home too. It had 5 bedrooms, and they thought, hey, let's make some money. So they rented it to some other people, and eventually the original renters left. They left no forwarding address, they stopped paying rent, they just left. And all that were left were these squatters, whom Jacob didn't know. They were stripping his property, they sold all the appliances out of his home, and they were destroying his house. And so Jacob came to investigate the situation. He saw people entering and leaving his own home that he'd never seen before in his life. So he called the sheriff's department. And he said, these people are in my house. I don't know who they are. And the sheriff's department said, well, they're squatters, and they have squatters' rights. We can't remove them. And Jacob said, well, then I'm going to go in and remove them myself. And they said, no. It's illegal for you to go into your own house. So now he was in a position where if he entered his own home, he would have been arrested. And so all he could do is watch these people who were living in and trashing his home. They had rights. The squatters had more rights than the owner of the home. So that's what happened to Jesus. Jesus provided this beautiful planet with all of its blessings to humankind to live and enjoy and multiply. And humans lived on it, they trashed it, and they eventually forgot who gave it to them. And when he came to visit, he was treated like an alien and eventually arrested and killed. Jesus, as you know, is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He never changes. He hadn't changed, but this world had. This world had evolved to the point where Jesus' teaching was considered radical. He wasn't radical, but the world and its values had become so warped that his teaching seemed like it was out of this world. Let me give you some examples from the Sermon on the Mount this morning. I'm going to display it on the screen from the NIV, but I'm going to read it from the NAV, which is the New Alien Version. So Matthew 5:21 and 22 in the New Alien Version says, in this world you believe, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But actually, anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Or Matthew 25:27 and 28. This world thinks it's okay if you don't commit the actual act of adultery, but actually, anyone who actually even looks at someone lustfully has already committed adultery with them in his heart. Or Matthew 5:33 through 37. It says again, the world says that if you say something but don't swear that it's true, it's not considered lying. But actually, you shouldn't swear at all, not on a stack of Bibles or on your mother's grave or anything else. Here's a concept. Always tell the truth. Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one, the prince of this world. Matthew 5:38 through 44. You've been taught. I heard this from someone in authority once. You've been taught, if they punch you, punch back twice as hard. Here's what aliens do. We don't resist an evil person, we respond lovingly. We don't react to insults with more insults on Twitter. If someone hits us, we don't react angrily or try to get revenge. If someone tries to sue us, let's do something so radical that they will be stunned. Let them win. And even give them more. If someone presses you into service, smile and do what they ask, and even twice as much. Give to the one who asks you, and loan to the one who wants to borrow from you. You once thought it okay to love your neighbor but hate your enemy. But aliens love our enemies and pray for those who mistreat us. And this one isn't in the Bible, but I just want to add one more I really need to work on. When someone cuts you off in traffic, just let them go. And pray that they reach their destination safely. Because they're driving like a crazy person. But by behaving this way, by behaving so unlike the world, but so like Jesus, people won't even know what to make of us. If we react to everything the same way the world does, no one will think we're any different. Because guess what? We're not. So let's surprise some people. Let's respond to words and deeds in love. Let's truly understand. You know, we used to wear those bracelets, WWJD, you know, what would Jesus do? And then we'd do whatever we wanted to. People say, what does that bracelet stand for? Oh, I don't know. What would Jesus do? Let's understand what that truly means, and then let's do it. It doesn't come naturally because we are human, but as we become more and more alien like Jesus, it begins to seem like the right thing to do. At the end of Jesus' ministry, when he gathered his disciples for the Last Supper, Jesus did something very alien. He did something that no one ever would have thought of doing in his position. He washed the disciples' feet. He, the master, humbled himself and washed the feet of his followers. That was telling enough. But in the course of the evening, he prayed a prayer over his disciples. And I encourage you to read this prayer. It's found in John chapter 17. But he prayed a prayer over his disciples. And this prayer, it wasn't just to those 11 that were present. Judas had already left at this point. But it wasn't just to those 11. It was a prayer lifted up on behalf of all disciples, both present and future, including you and I. So let me just read John 17:14. It says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. So here Jesus makes the statement that he is not of this world. In other words, he is an alien here, and he also states that those of us who are his followers are aliens just as much as he is. Think about that for a moment. Jesus was radically different from this world, and that was 2,000 years ago. This world has evolved a lot since then. Jesus was very much an oddball in his time on earth, and if his disciples were just as odd then as he was, and the world has regressed a lot since then, we are supposed to be even odder. We should stand out like green Martians with 3 eyes and antennae at this point in the history of mankind. Let me give you some questions to reflect on, just to think about, maybe to meditate on a little bit. Do we feel comfortable in this world? Have we settled for what the world considers normal? Do we work hard to fit in among the non-aliens, the pagans? has our behavior changed much since we became Christians? Can people tell us apart from everyone else? Are we as alien in our world as Jesus was in his? Got real quiet in here. That's good. That's good. Those are hard questions. And I need to ask myself those same questions. I think our human nature is to blend in, to not stand out. We don't want to be the oddball. I find it amusing that every generation wants to be unique. They want to stand out and they want to be independent from their parents' generation. And probably the most radical departure in centuries was the 60s hippie movement. And I'm going to date myself a little bit here. But I was in junior high when everything changed. I remember grade school, you know, it was like Beaver Cleaver, you know. Nobody wore jeans to school, and girls all had to wear skirts or dresses, and boys all had crew cuts. And in junior high, we rebelled. We wanted to declare our independence, and so we came to school and we let our hair grow out, and we were going to be these wild, crazy, hippie people. And you know, here's what I discovered. You know, we thought we expressed our independence, we did our own thing, we rebelled against the system, we tried to be and dress stranger than everything else. Funny thing is, we pretty much all look alike. You know, we all wore bell-bottom jeans, you know, we all wore tie-dyed t-shirts. Girls all had the same long straight hair, you know. The enemy might try to make you think that you're different, that you're making a statement. But all those that aren't following Jesus, they're all on that same broad road to destruction. They all look pretty much the same. In our minds, do we think we're radically different from the world? But to everyone else, we're pretty much the same. The problem is that we are biased when we judge ourselves. We tend to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but we don't extend that to others. We look at others and say, well, at least I'm not as bad as they are, without really knowing their story. Stephen Covey wrote, we judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. In other words, we justify our behavior, but we don't have the capacity to justify the behavior of others. We did wrong, but it's because of, you know, this circumstance. They did wrong, they have no excuse. That's how we judge people. So not only do we judge ourselves by how others act, but we sort of put our finger on the scale in our own favor. There is only one judge, and that is Jesus Christ. And there is only one standard by which we should live, and that's also Jesus Christ. So he is both our judge and our standard. Galatians 6:3-4 says, if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Each one should test his own actions. Then he can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. I think that we all deceive ourselves. We all fall into that trap of comparison. We also are seeking the approval of someone. When we're young, we seek the approval of our parents. When we get a little older, we seek the approval of our peers. We're always asking ourselves those burning questions. Am I good enough? Will others like me? What should I do so others will accept me? Well, here's a fact. If we are just seeking the approval of people, we will never get it. There will always be someone that doesn't like you. There will always be someone that thinks you're not good enough. Paul spoke the truth when he wrote Galatians 1:10. He said, am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God? Or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. We know that we don't work our way into heaven. We don't earn our salvation. But we love our Savior enough that we want to please Him. We want to hear that statement, well done, good and faithful servant. We are His. We are not our own. We were bought with a price. It should be our desire to choose to please Him more than we choose to please the people of this world. Here's the beauty of it. We can actually do both. Romans 14:18 says, anyone who serves Christ in this way is pleasing to God and approved by men. We can both please God and be approved by men. It won't happen all the time because we live in an evil world, but if our goal is to be approved by people, we're going to fail. If our goal is to please God, we have much better success at being approved by people. How do we do that? By being like Jesus, the ultimate alien. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, and we who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into His likeness with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. We are in a process. A couple months ago, I showed you a picture of a caterpillar, of a cocoon, and of a beautiful moth. And that's metamorphosis. That's the same Greek word used here for transformation. We are being metamorphosed or being transformed. I don't know where each of us are in the process. I think some of us are probably caterpillars. Some of us are still cocoons. I don't think any of us are fully formed moths or butterflies. But the thing is, our final state is going to be different from where we are currently. We're going to get a new body, and we're going to live in a place where there is no enemy, there is no sin, there's no sorrow, no trouble. All of us aliens are going to be going to our alien world, and it's not going to seem alien because it's going to be home. We'll finally be somewhere where we feel like we're at home, and we'll all belong there because of the grace of God. 1 John 3:2 says, dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known, but we know that when He appears, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. We don't even know what that final outcome is going to be like. Maybe we will have 3 eyes. No, I doubt it. All that matters is that we are going to be like Jesus. And He is radically different from this world, and that's what we should strive for also. Let's be as alien to this world as Jesus is. Let's not conform after the pattern of this world, but let's be transformed or metamorphosed into the image of Christ, the ultimate being. Pray with me. Dear Lord, we thank you, God, for the examples of your word. We thank you for the example of sending Christ from His home in glory to this world that had become very alien to Him when He came. He was so out of place here. But we thank you for sending Him to show us how to live in this world that has evolved so far, far from what you designed it to be. And help us, Lord, to follow that example. Lord, I pray, God, that we would commit today to being oddballs, to being weirdos, whatever you want to call it, to being strange among a people that all appear to be pretty much striving to be the same. Let's stand out. Let's truly be different. Let's be Jesus. Let's be salt and light to a world that is decaying and dark. Help us, Lord. I'm going to ask if there's anyone here today. You haven't made that decision. You're still just like the rest of the world, and you want to make that change. You want to make that commitment to please Jesus and stop trying to please the people of this world. If that's you, just step out from where you are. I'd love to pray with you. Come up front. Just going to wait a moment. The rest of us, let's just pray. Help us, God, to have the courage to be different. Help us, Lord, to allow the process to take place, to be active participants in the process, to be agents of change in our own lives and in the lives of others. Help us, Lord, to strive to be more and more like Jesus. Lord, help us not to just keep the letter of the law which kills, but keep the spirit of the law which is life. Help us, Lord, to not just go by a set of rules or compare ourselves to how others are doing, but Lord, to truly follow Jesus, to live the way that He lived. Lord, I pray a blessing now on each one. I pray, Lord, that you would just move in our hearts. Help us, Lord, to continue to be more and more like Jesus, to be transformed into His image. Help us, God. Bless your people. Go with them. Keep them safe. I pray for health, Lord, and all of your blessings of peace on their lives. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.